Well, hello, welcome to another episode of Embrace Live. It must be Wednesday night at 8 p.m. or thereabouts. I think we're pretty much on time tonight, just about. We're a minute after, I think. So welcome, thank you for tuning in. It's great that you're with us again. If it's your first time, thank you for stumbling across this thing called Embrace Live. Let me just give you a rough outline of what we plan to do. We plan to spend an hour. We do this each week, and 8 till 9 thereabouts, and we chat with different people from not just Embrace Church in Darlington. We started off by doing that, which is great, and there are wonderful people in Embrace Church. I really enjoy doing the church thing with them. They're marvellous people. But what's great about this is that we actually talk about the church, which is there's only one church with a capital C, and I'll say that most weeks, to be honest. And we celebrate, and it's great to hear about how God is moving right across the region, right across Teesside, Tees Valley, all of those different areas, the Northeast, UK, and beyond, because God is on the move, is doing this stuff, and it's great to hear people from the church in different locations, different flavours, as I like to describe them, talking about how God is moving in their area and how they are serving Him, how they are, using the gifts that God has given them to serve Him and to impact their communities, wherever that may be. So, it's great that, we've got another episode tonight. We've got a wonderful guest. Claire Harrison has joined us tonight. She's there. I can see her on my other monitor. She's ready and waiting. We've had a little bit of a chat before we came on air, and it's going to be great to catch up with Claire and just hear how she serves and use the gifts that God has given her in lots of different areas, really, particularly around the gift of prophecy. So it's going to be great to hear a little bit more about, how does she use those gifts within her own church and beyond, which is fantastic. So if you're tuning in, please just why don't you just kind of post a few messages. We always like to try and make these sessions interactive. As always, we want to post questions, post comments, and that's the beauty of if you're tuning in live tonight, which is great. We do want to kind of make time for your comments and questions, like we say for Claire, and we want to respond to them. And if you're not able to join us live and you're tuning in afterwards, well, it's still great that you can do so. And, brilliant, please, I hope you get something out of this, and encouragement, maybe pose a few questions. We always put the contact details up with our guests. So if you want to get in touch with them afterwards, then they're all hopefully available to kind of meet with you or chat with you at the very least. All right. So just want to say a very quick example I said to Claire, honestly, before we came on air, I'm tripping over my words tonight. It's the end of term. Many of you know that I'm a teacher, and I don't want to start making the sub story of end of term, but when you talk for a living, you get home on a night time and you just start talking absolute rubbish. But I'm going to try and get through this with as many mistakes as I can, which is not good for kind of live stream session. And actually, Claire as well described me as a bit of a DJ sounding kind of guy. I'm looking at my other monitor here just to see her reaction. So she's I could be up for a DJ job, which I wouldn't mind actually. I quite like that. So maybe if I don't do well at teaching, I can maybe look for a local DJ firm or whatever it might take me on. You never know. All right. So I think I'll be like Peter Kay being a DJ, wouldn't I, really? There we go. The vinyl countdown, as he said. So I'm just looking at my other monitor, and we've got Sue. Welcome, Sue. Thanks for joining us. Sue's a marvellous person who goes to Embrace Church. Brilliant. Such an amazing Mama Sue, as we like to call her. Mike Connolly has joined us again. Mike's an amazing fella, thank you. And Jill, and it's always good to have other people. Listen, if you're joining us for the first time, please don't be shy. Put us a comment online, and it'll be great to hear from you. Say hello. And like I say, we'll get into touch with, we'll get into discussions anyway with Claire in a moment. So, I should have introduced myself. My name's Dave Dixon. If it is your first time here, thank you for tuning in. Like I say, I get the absolute pleasure of serving and doing the church thing with people over at Embrace Church. I'm part of the leadership team over there. And really, I've got the absolute privilege of going to various different places and getting invited, particularly leading worship. You can see if I go the right way. I've actually just had a little rejig of my office area, and I've put out my ladies here just because I like to look at them, because guitars should be played. All right, so I'm a bit of a musician, and I like to be able to do that as well, and it's an absolute privilege. Hi, Paul. Thanks for tuning in. All right, it's great to have you, and please do us a favour. If you haven't already done so, share the stream on your social channels, just to encourage your friends and family to come and join us. And it would be really useful, if you don't mind, if you could head over to our YouTube channel. Just do a search for, in YouTube, Embrace Church Darlington. Because we want to actually have that URL. We want that domain there so we'll be able to register. But you need over 100 subscribers, and we're not there yet. So it'd be really helpful if you haven't already subscribed to the Embrace Church channel. That would be great. Tell you what, without further ado, let's go over and say a quick hello to Claire. Just check that she's ready and she's waiting and poised, and then I'll do a little bit more, and then we'll get into a chat with her. So let's just head over to Claire. See how she's doing. Hi, Claire. How are you?
Hi. Hello. Hi. Nice to see you all
Are you well?
online. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. I was just following on Facebook there and seeing all the familiar faces, well, familiar names
Yeah.
and comments. So, yeah, nice to see you all on there. And nice set of guitars, Dave, I have to
Thank you.
say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very impressive.
Oh yes, oh yes, good. Somebody appreciation there. Like I say, you don't sound like my wife,
Yeah.
thankfully, by saying you can only play one at a time. But they're all different. All that. What about bags and shoes? Anyway, we won't get into all of that. Anyway, so Claire, we'll come back to you in a moment. All right, but just give you a little bit of a breather just before we kind of talk. So listen, it's great. You're online. Please make it interactive. Please post your comments and your questions for Claire and I, and we'll kind of go through, particularly Claire, because you hear enough of me, really. So I'm going to just start with a little kind of leaders intro video, like I like to do, and then we'll get into it and we'll chat further with Claire, which is obviously the most important focus of tonight. So before we do that, though, I want to just say that we have got a number of people still coming up. It's just a slide I've been showing earlier for a number of weeks now, really, and you can see some of those have been guests already. I'm pleased to say we've got another date with Tony Grange, who's a difficult fella to pin down. But we've got, John Searle, and we've got many others. We've got Nat Moody as well. And I'm looking around, we've got Barry Thompson and so on. And Tim Y. Williams is on there as well. So a number of faces still to kind of feature. And I'm pleased to say, I was just telling Claire before we came on air, I'm pleased to say that actually we're booked up till the end of April, really, and I'm working on now. I'm starting to go into May and trying to encourage as many people as possible to come on and feature, tell us their story, tell us how they're involved and how they're serving God in whatever way they've been gifted in the ministries and opportunities that come their way, really. So, without further ado, let's do the leaders intro and let's get chatting to Claire. Here we go. And here we are. Hello, Claire, again. All right. So,
Hi.
it's going to be great just to kind of chat. Like I say, it's going to be very informal. It just, somebody once said it's like, Phil and Holly or whatever, that's a kind of approach that we're going for. I don't know whether that's a good thing. I don't know. There we go. But, it'll be
Ambitious.
nice and chatty, and I will give you a chance. I know I can talk myself, but you said you can talk, so I'm trying to get my words in
Yeah.
first. So
Yeah.
that's all right. I can see Alan has joined us. Let me just post it on there. Just Alan is senior pastor at Embrace Church Darlington. Always
Hi,
good.
Alan.
And there's his picture with Tony, his good lady wife. Okay, wonderful couple. Love them. Brilliant. And I just want to put on here as well. I think Mike Connolly, good friend of ours, has just really set the tone really, and a little bit, and then obviously he did qualify his statement there anyway. So Mike, just for that, the penalty for kind of comments like that, Mike, would you do me a favour and would you post in the comments the link to the Embrace Church YouTube channel so people can go on and hopefully subscribe and things like that. And then we've got Mr. Saxton online as well. All right, hey up, our Claire
Hi,
Harrison.
Paul. Oh, I like Paul. I see him sometimes around TVCC doing it. He comes into the coffee shop with his laptop
Oh yeah,
and pretends that he's doing work.
yeah, yeah. He's just on
Yeah,
FaceTube, isn't he? Those kind of things, and
yeah. I've
cyber
caught him a few
slacking.
times.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, doing work. Oh, you
yeah,
can't see that.
yeah, yeah.
Work.
Love it, love it. Paul, we've got you sussed, isn't that true? You know, feel free to kind of defend yourself on your comments and things like that. So, Paul, I mean, Paul is a great guy as well. I just want to say that I agree. Claire,
Yeah,
so it would be good to kind of, for those that don't know you, it would be good to hear a little bit of who you are. You know, before we get into your story, if you like, you know, but like, you know, what do you do for a day job? Have you got family? What is all of that? And you know, it'd be good to just kind of put you into a bit of context. But then we'd love to hear your story, if that's okay with you. You know, in
yeah,
terms of,
yeah.
you know, when did you become a Christian? What was life like before? What were the circumstances? What was happening? And then, why did you get to that point where you committed your life to Jesus, following him? And then, obviously I think we've pretty much found out that life isn't perfect from that point onwards. So, how has kind of God been moving in your life and brought you into different seasons and sustained you and all of those kind of things?
Hmm.
All right. So why don't you
Okay.
give us a bit of your background, first of all, who you are, put yourself into context.
Okay. That's a massive list of things, by the way. So
Oh
you'll
yeah.
have to keep me going as we go along
Yeah, yeah.
because I'll forget. Um, okay. So my name's Claire Harrison. I'm married to Warren. I have two children who are quite grown up now. So both of them have now left home. I
Right.
have a son called Gideon, who is part of Collective Church in York. So he has gone down there as part of the team to plant that church.
Good man.
And I have a daughter called Amelie, who is better known as Millie to most people.
Yeah.
She's at university in Exeter, so she's just in her first year of a theology degree down there.
Right.
So we're childless now at home,
Wow.
which is kind of a mixed blessing.
Yeah.
Sometimes, some days I miss them. A lot of the time, I'm thinking, yes, I don't have to make the dinner.
Yeah. I love
Only
the
have to make
honesty.
it for two people. Yeah, we can have cereal for our tea, things like that, which becomes very important when you've cooked a dinner for, 20 odd years.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, yeah, so that's our family. I um I'm sort of I'm self-employed at the moment, so I was working for Junction 42. I don't know if you would have heard. Well, most of you will have heard of Junction 42, I think.
Give us a little kind of intro to Junction 42. Who are they? Because I know they're an amazing
Yeah.
organisation.
Yeah, so Junction 42 are an amazing charity who work with prisoners, both in prison and ex-offenders in the community.
Mm.
And they work with employability, they work with creative arts in prison, mainly doing art
Wow.
courses, which kind of really are all a vehicle for their main mission, really, which is to share the gospel
Yeah.
with people and to set the captives free. So I was working for Junction 42 as the Teesside area manager, and I won't go into the full long story, but a few years ago, God called me. I've worked in addictions for about 20 years, so I've
Right.
worked with drug, alcohol, and smoking addictions.
Yeah.
In drug projects in the NHS, mainly in the criminal justice system, going in as part of the NHS into prisons or criminal
Yeah.
justice settings, or as a drug worker into those settings. So that's what I did for a long, long time in the secular world, in my job. And then God called me out of that about 5 years ago.
Right.
I again series of circumstances and some prophetic words that were kind of brewing. And I think when you're a prophet as well, you just have that sense of this change coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something's coming. So I gave up my secular job, and then and I was going to be an artist. That was my plan, was
Yeah.
to resurrect my art work, which is another. I'll tell you about that in a sec. But I felt like that's what God was calling me back into. And pretty much as soon as I left my job, I was approached by Junction 42 to come and work for them.
Right.
Um, which I did because it seemed like, yeah, that seems sensible. I was probably a little bit terrified of not having a job as well, and not having a
Yeah.
steady income and things like that.
Understandable.
So yeah, yeah. So I went into that, and then, and really, I think really over the next couple of years, I began to realize that actually my first reason for leaving was to pursue my art, and really I had no time to do that.
Right.
So I was furloughed, and then I just felt like God was saying, now is a good time, while there is tight, because prisons were locked down and things like that. And I felt like this is a good time,
Yeah.
really, where it won't interrupt too much. It gives them a time to find somebody else and all of that. So I stopped working for Junction 42, and I became really full time as a fine artist.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm up to at the moment. So I've done that now for about a year and a half, and I've done various projects, but I have a lot of things in the pipeline,
Yeah.
really. Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, I've met you a number of times over the years, but I've never really had much chance because we've always been so busy in kind of doing things
Yeah.
like Stockton Connect and it's serving a ministry and things like that. But I've never really had much chance to kind of get to kind of know you too well, other than to say hi and can you pray for him
Yeah.
and all this kind of stuff. So, actually, I didn't know that you were an artist. So I really enjoyed it. I did a fine art degree, believe it or not, as well. So,
Did you?
yeah, I did.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
All these closet artists.
Yeah. I wanted to originally be a graphic designer, and I went into fine art and photography and video and things like that is where I really kind of
Wow.
specialised in, particularly for photography. So yeah, I'm one of those arty types as well. So that's good. But I've really
Very
enjoyed,
interesting.
looking at your kind of site, and obviously we'll put your contact details up. And one of the things that we've got a little bit later on is a link to your site. So please, everyone go and check it out and have a look at the amazing kind of work that you're doing, which is great. Because you're exhibiting as well, aren't you? You've had local exhibits. Is that right? In different places.
Yeah, I have. I've had. I've been part of. I think the first one that I had when I came back to art was Stockton Contemporary. There was a
Right.
show called Stockton Contemporary that was all around the town centre, and I had a piece in that. It was actually in Julia Powell's space in the
Right.
the arcade, the Enterprise Arcade.
Yeah.
So that was a video piece that I did, which is on my website. It's called Anoint Me.
Yeah.
And that's also now going into another faith and arts online exhibition. So I've been in that. I've been in Let Us Eat Cake, which is a recent sort of women's show in Middlesbrough. I've put on curated exhibitions as well.
Yeah.
So we did Light Space in Stockton. Really, I'm in the what I'm. I guess where you would find me as an artist is in that contemporary art space. So I'm not a painter. I'm a sculpture installationist kind of sculptor. Slash I make installations, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
But I tend to try and make experiences that kind of reflect God, but are not overtly evangelistic, if you know what I mean. So my they point towards God and they have a lot of references, but I'm trying to be in the secular world and be stealthy really with my faith.
Yeah.
Not hidden, which is a different thing, but I'm just trying to be wise about how I share some of that stuff. So so it's very sort of mixed media. I'm kind of into drawing at the moment. I do a lot of very large drawings. You might have seen my angel drawings. I've been doing at the moment. And those were in response to some prophetic sort of pictures and visions that God gave me about the region. So so go on my website and have a little look. Feel free to get in contact with me on Facebook or something like that as well if you want to ask more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm more than happy to talk about that. But I didn't know you were a fine artist. That's very interesting.
Yes.
It's funny how artists always end up doing other things, isn't it?
Yeah. I like art, but I trained alongside us to be a teacher as well, so I could have actually some income, that kind of stuff. So, Funny enough, I've
Yeah,
never
yeah.
been the art lead in school ever. You know, I've been in education now well over 25 years, and I've never been the leader of art
Wow.
in school. But there we go. Anyway, yeah. So
Yeah,
there's one of those things. There we go. A lot of people are kind of nodding now and explains a lot about my temperament and artistic and all of that. Anyway, we won't
yeah.
get into all of those stereotypes.
Creative. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there we go. But yeah, certainly people check out obviously Claire's website. We will put those details on a little bit later on as well. I'm just looking over at the comments, see that we've been joined by Philip Cartmel, another good friend of ours, which is great that you can join us, Philip. And he's, you know, in the usual way, I'll put it on the screen because he's just, you know, he's just a lovely fella. He's just saying hi, lovely.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether that's to you, Claire, or to me. I'm hoping it's me, but you know, maybe you can clarify that in the comments. I don't know, but you know, but there we go. Philip's, you know, a legend. You know, again, another fortunate, you know, that he's get to do life with him at the Embrace Church in Darlington as well, which is brilliant. Okay, so. First of all, Junction 42. Thanks for that little intro to Junction 42 and your time there. Junction 42, I really want to get in touch with somebody. I want them to feature on Embrace Live as well. So, you know, Claire, if you put me in touch with somebody, that'd be great. Or if somebody who else is you know watching, I think it'd be great to have Junction 42 feature on at 1 week.
Well, I noticed you've got John Searle coming on. Has he been on? Well, he works for Junction 42.
Yeah, he's coming up. Yeah, we did have a time, but then we had to cancel that. So he's coming up later in next month, I think. So he's working for them now, isn't he? Yeah.
He is, yeah.
Yes. So, okay, there we go. So
and
maybe
Pete Conroy does a day a week for Junction 42. He was my
Pete Conroy
partner.
does a day a week for everybody, doesn't he? As far as
he does, yeah.
I mean, there's only 7 days in a week, as far as I can remember. I think he does about 9 days a week or something. I don't know how that works.
I had to manage Pete Conroy. That was part of my job.
Unlucky.
I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. Was that one of those clear signs that God was talking to you about moving on? I don't know.
Actually, we had such a good laugh. Yeah. I loved working with Pete. We did Alpha in Home House Prison every week, and it was just the best. We had a great time doing it.
I love Pete. He's great. He's done an episode of Embrace Live as well for us, you know, a while ago. So remember, folks, that if you have missed some episodes and if you've got some spare time and you want to catch up, then you can always go back, obviously, in the archives on the Facebook page, on the YouTube channel, and rewatch them. Share them with, you know, your friends and your family and things like that. Claire, we've got our first question, and you know, Alan is very good at asking questions. So I'm just going to pop it on screen. Obviously, you talked about God showing you things. All right, and you know what we're always very conscious of is actually there may well be people viewing and you're watching this might have, like I said, stumbled across it in flicking through the news feeds and things like that, or YouTube, and who maybe don't do the church thing. Okay, so you know, I mean, obviously, Alan's asking a really good question there. Is how does God show you things? Can you explain for you how that kind of works really?
Yeah, absolutely. So, As Christians, we believe that God speaks.
Yeah.
Okay, we believe that God is not dead. He's not just somebody who's written about in the Bible or who is an idea. You know, that we believe that God is real and alive and speaks today in the same ways that he did to all kinds of characters in the Bible. And if you've read anything in the Bible, you will know that God speaks to people regularly. Okay, so God hasn't stopped speaking.
Right,
he still speaks to people today. And, you know, if you have a relationship with Jesus and you are filled with the Holy Spirit, I'm sure somebody has talked about that on here, then you can listen to God's voice. So in the same way that we can pray and talk to God, we can listen and hear God talk back to us. So the way that God usually speaks to me, and this has been probably throughout the majority of my life, so probably since I was about 14 or 15, I've been aware that I've had, out of the blue, I'll have maybe pictures in my mind, or I'll have impressions of things, you know, where a certain phrase sticks with you for quite a long time. It might be a verse of scripture that pops into my mind, usually out of the blue. That's usually how I can identify that it's not just me. And over time, I've just learned, a bit like learning a language. You know, you have to learn to, or learning, I guess, like when you're in a relationship with anybody, you learn to understand and to recognize that person's voice.
Yeah, I love that.
So, so you do have to, there has to be some kind of paying attention in the first place. and expecting God to speak to you. And then I think how I've sort of recognized that it was God, and not just, thoughts in my head, is that a lot of times I've been in a situation where I've been praying with somebody, or chatting to somebody in a God context, and a thought has come in my mind, or a picture, or some kind of, little cinema screen in my mind, of something going on. And then I've shared that with that, and I've learned to pay attention to that and say, okay, God, I think this might be you.
Yeah.
If it's you, just tell me what this means, And usually it formulates in my mind, that like something will formulate, like a little message out of that. And then when I've shared it, the test is when I've shared it with that person or shared it with a group. It's been right.
Yeah.
Someone's thought, actually, that's just what I needed to hear right now. It's kind of made sense to somebody, or even just as it's coming out your mouth, that what you're saying is much more articulate or much more clear than you are normally. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think there's
Yeah.
sometimes a sense of power behind it as well. When you start to put those words out there, it's like there's unusual power comes behind those words, and they
Yeah.
have impact on people.
Amazing.
Um, so I hope that explains it. Maybe please keep asking me questions, because sometimes these things are quite hard to grasp.
Yeah.
But I know people who have heard God's voice before they were Christians as well,
Right.
and often that's been people they've been led somehow to Jesus, or they've had it like a dream or a vision of Jesus or something like that
Yeah.
before they became a Christian. And then they've come to a place, come to a point where someone's maybe talked to them about Jesus, and that's come back to them, and it's all kind of made sense. And they've thought, oh, that's what that was.
Yeah.
God's been trying to speak to me all this time, and suddenly it kind of all comes together, and makes sense, and causes them then to follow Jesus or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Alan is just saying thank you. So, obviously he's clear. Very happy with that. And I think I love what you were saying. That sense of power of speaking God's word, and clear articulation. Obviously, you talked about that learning a language, which I love that. Again, tuning in and spending time with God and recognizing that, and so on, and those kind of how it kind of speaks to you through pictures and impressions. You said might be a phrase or a piece of scripture. Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about that in a little bit more in a moment. When but I think it'd be good. We said obviously people are really interested in people's stories, so let's kind of go back a little bit, because obviously that's clearly how God is using you, and again that's really helpful. How God speaks through, and it speaks to us in lots of different ways, and that again through prophecy, and amazing how kind of sharing those words with people and or groups and things as you feel led, and like you say, being confident in doing that. But let's go back a little bit and just kind of give us a kind of a brief kind of review, if you like, or recount of your journey. What was happening. Were you born a Christian? Those kind of things. Was it from birth you emerged as a prophet and things like that, or how did that happen? Go on then.
Okay. Well, I grew up in a Christian family, so my story is probably fairly unremarkable, but at the same time, everyone's testimony is full of God, isn't it?
Amen.
So
Yeah.
I grew up in a Christian family, and I come from several generations of evangelical Christian leaders,
Yeah.
actually.
Right.
So I was surrounded by the Word of God. I was surrounded by Christians. I was in an environment my whole life where that was the norm.
Yeah.
And I, when I was a teenager, I was part of a big church in the south of England. My parents moved down to London when I was about 11, and previous to that, when we were in Scotland, as you can hear, I'm from Scotland. Previous to that, we were in a church in Scotland, a Baptist church. And when we came down south, we went to another Baptist church, which is called Gold Hill Baptist Church,
Right.
which is quite well known in sort of Christian circles. And at the time when we joined that church, the Holy Spirit was on the move. It was the late 80s, no, mid 80s, and the Holy Spirit was kind of moving through churches, and that church particularly, and crazy, amazing things were happening. People were being healed. People were speaking in tongues. People were, when all of these things were relatively new, people were having amazing prophetic words and
Yeah.
words of knowledge, which is where you just know something about someone that you could have never known because God told you, and that person's like, wow, how did you know that? That
Yeah.
God must be real. It was just a really amazing, energetic time. And I played the oboe in the worship team in that
Come
church.
on, did you? Wow.
I did,
The
yeah.
oboe. God.
alongside Roy Castle.
Oh yeah.
So there you go. That's my claim to fame. Roy Castle was sat next to me playing his trumpet in the worship team in Gold Hill Baptist Church. So there you go.
Did you have a lot of
Young people.
dedication? Because apparently that's all you need.
Have
You have to
you
be of
got
a
one of
certain
those?
age to get that joke, don't you? Really?
Yeah,
Come
yeah.
on, please put in the comments if you actually got that, or have I just done a complete cringy moment?
You've
And
got to be a certain age, don't you, for
yeah, yeah,
this?
yeah.
Um, any younger people are like, I've got no idea who you're talking about. Um, so yeah, so we were in that church, and that was, that was like it just blew my mind,
Yeah.
really. I mean, God, I was baptized in that church, and I was prayed for to be filled with the Holy Spirit. I spoke in tongues. It was very kind of straightforward. I was immersed in an atmosphere of the Holy Spirit every single week. Our
Yeah.
our young people. I was part of the youth work. Our youth work was going out on the streets praying for people to be healed, praying. We went into London, we went to the South Bank and prayed for the homeless and saw people healed, saw people's legs grow, like
Amazing.
longer. We saw people, we made sandwiches. We used to go around to our youth leader's house on a Saturday afternoon. And this is how amazing it was. Young people don't do that. Do you know what I mean? I would work in the morning in a vegetable shop in Gerrard's Cross, and then we would go around to our youth leader's house and make a load of sandwiches, make tea, coffee,
Yeah.
and we would drive up to London on a Saturday. This went on for 2 or 3 years, and
Wow.
we would go to the South Bank and give out sandwiches to homeless people and pray for them on the streets. And it was radical. My faith level as a sort of 15, 16-year-old was through the roof because of what I was seeing day in, day out, really.
Fantastic.
Um,
Yeah.
that was a really great time. And as part of that, I was in the worship team, and my worship pastor knew that I was artistic. I was always artistic at school and everything. And he was friends with my mum and dad, and he came around the house one time, and I had some artwork that I'd brought home from school.
Yeah.
And he's this they were doing this thing at Spring Harvest, this new thing where people would paint on a platform, and ask God to speak, and they would do this prophetic painting of what God was speaking. So this worship pastor asked me if I would do this, if I would stand on the platform and paint,
Great.
um, and listen to what God was saying, and then paint it. And because a grown up had asked me, and you don't say no to grown ups, so I said yes, I'll do that. And then the day came, and I stood on this platform with this easel and paper board, and was terrified.
Were you?
I was absolutely beside myself with terror. I thought I was going to be sick.
Wow.
But I thought, well, God, I'm here now. I've got to do something. I'm in front of all these people. You have to speak to me. And so I just, through the worship, I was just like, oh Lord, you have to speak. Terrified.
Yeah.
And I had that, and this is my first experience of prophecy, first experience of God speaking really clearly when I was 15. I saw in my mind, I heard all these people worshiping behind me in the church, and I saw I saw like a cracked, dry riverbed, like you would get in Africa,
Yeah.
and I saw a hand push up through this riverbed, and as the hand pushed up, rain started to fall
Wow.
on this dry riverbed, and I knew what it meant. I like when God starts to speak, it just kind of comes together,
Yeah.
and I knew that it was, and I was only 15. So I started to paint this picture. I drew all of it out and painted it really badly. I'm not really a painter, I have to say. Painted this picture, and then I had to describe in the microphone what I'd seen and everything. And I
Wow.
described it, and I just said, in as a 15-year-old, probably could explain it better now, but I said, that people are reaching up and in worship, and that God is sending His rain,
Come on.
and that was it,
Come
really.
on.
So that was my very first experience of prophesying, but I didn't know that's what it was.
Okay.
I didn't have a language for it at that stage
Yeah.
in my life. Um, and then I went to art school in Newcastle. So I didn't do that again. That's the only time I've ever done that. I've never, ever
Really?
painted on a platform. It's the only time. And I'm not going to do it again.
Is it because you're not being asked to, or is it because of that experience you thought, I'm not doing that ever
Oh,
again?
because of that, mainly because of that
Yeah.
experience. And it's not my calling, okay? And
Okay.
so, yeah.
Well, bless you for thank you for
Loads of
standing up
people
then
now
and doing
think
it. Yeah. Giving it a go.
Yeah, loads of people now think I need deliverance or healing or something, or maybe I do. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I've not done it again. But it was my first experience of prophesying,
Yeah.
and so I didn't know that that's what that was. I had no language or vocabulary for that, and I was only 15, so I wasn't in the adult like training and stuff where they were
Right.
doing
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I went, I carried on at school and college and stuff. Went and did a whatever, can't remember what you call it, foundation course. And then I went
Yeah.
to Northumbria University and did fine art. And while I was at art school, really, I just backslid. I was just quite far away from the Lord. I
Yeah.
was well away from home because my parents lived in the south of England. And and when you're at art school, it's very liberal. In those days, it was very liberal. Actually think now it would be easier to be a Christian at art school, but it was quite hard to be a Christian at art school.
Yeah.
And it was a very secular course. I was encouraged to you're encouraged to take off all the boundaries and explore who you are and all that. So
Yeah.
I just threw myself into that, and explored pushed all kinds of boundaries, which I won't go into because I'm ashamed of them.
Okay.
But I did lots of things that I shouldn't have done, and I got quite far away from God.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, I couldn't stop making art that had God somewhere in the core of it.
Right.
So I would make things. Some of them are on my website. Some of that work's really old, but I would make things that were some circular symbols, spherical things, because they demonstrated eternity, no beginning, no end.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's all kinds of symbolism in what I made that was really uh, about God, about the kingdom of God,
Mm.
and probably my sort of prophetic thing coming out. And I met my husband at uni. He wasn't a Christian. He was doing media production. So he was another creative. And even though I was really far away, I started to fall in love with this person. And it started to get really serious, probably the first really serious relationship I'd had.
Right.
And I started to think, I started to kind of evangelize him. I started to think it was really important that he knew about Jesus,
Yeah.
even though my lifestyle was so demonstrating nothing to do with Jesus. But I felt it was so important that he knew Jesus. And this started to kind of become a bit of a contradiction. I was like, why do I think it's so important for somebody else to know Jesus when I'm not even bothered myself? I'm
Yeah.
not living like I even think that's important. So I told him about Jesus so many times, while clearly demonstrating that I was not following him myself.
Yeah.
And anyway, something started to happen in Warren.
Right.
And because I've got all this Christian family background and connections and everything, I think my parents knew that this was a serious relationship. They had people praying for Warren all over the world,
Wow.
um, and he it got to the point where I'm a very kind of, I do have a line, you know what I mean? I did have a line.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where I thought, this is getting so serious that if I go any further, I felt like I would be saying no to God and yes to Warren.
Right.
You know what I mean? I felt
Yeah.
like it was that kind of choice that if I got to a line where I thought, if I go beyond this line, I'm saying, God, I reject you and I choose Warren.
Mm.
I don't know if that makes sense at the time. It made sense in my mind at the time.
Yeah.
And I knew that I had to, that I either had to break up with him or he had to become a Christian. That was the only way that we could
Right.
go
Yeah.
over this line, or carry on. So
Yeah.
I put that to him, thinking that he would fall on his knees and say, "What must I do to be saved?" But he didn't.
Right.
He said, "Actually, no, I can't just follow Jesus just for you. You know that, because he had a line as well."
Yeah.
um, and so he said, we were both devastated, but he said, I'm not going to do that. So we broke up. This is not what I intended to talk about when I come on tonight,
Wow.
but it's probably
Wow.
quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we broke up, and he and we went our separate ways. And
Really. Right.
yeah, yeah. And then during the next sort of couple of months, I didn't know that he was on a bit of a journey himself, and he had started to pray and started to talk to God, um,
Wow.
and and actually got on his knees one night by his bed in his little student flat room, and basically said to God, if you're real, then I want to give my life to you. He had kind of, I think he would say, felt like he had no reason not to believe.
Yeah.
Um, so he prayed. He asked. He had a dream as well. He had a prophetic dream. We're both quite prophetic. He had a dream just before this where he was he was in some dark caves. He was in a very
Right.
dark place, and he found a hand. There's a bit of a theme going through here. Found a hand on the ground, just this like disembodied hand, and he heard somebody in his dream say, "That's the right hand of God, and you have to pick it up." And he knew that was significant. He
Yeah.
knew that God was speaking to him. Didn't know it was God, but he knew that this was like not just a normal dream. So he got on his knees. He prayed. He asked God to. He said, "Come into my life, Lord, if you're real."
Mm.
And he had a physical sensation of being filled up, from his feet, up to his head.
Yeah.
And he knew something had happened. So so we, so long story short, we are now married. We've been married for 28 years or something. I can't remember exactly. 28
Wow.
years
Good on
coming
you.
up. Um, so that so and that we kind of carried on at university. Didn't really we didn't we I mean, we were both Christians, but we didn't really get stuck into a church or anything. We're just having, being students, really. But then after we got married, the year after university, we started getting involved in church, really, and leading youth groups and things like that. And
Yeah.
Warren got baptized shortly before we got married as well.
Amazing.
So yeah, I've kind of lost my train of thought
No,
there,
well, I
but
mean, it's clear from your story. I mean, that's great. I mean, obviously, it's good to know kind of people's stories and, obviously different seasons, and obviously your personal testimony, but hearing about Warren's story as well, and like you said, the journey that he was on. Well, we're all on a journey
Oh,
still. Yeah,
just let me add one thing. What I didn't say was that whole experience. Um, it it did something with my relationship with God. So I
right.
went from having grown up. I mean, I knew God was real. I never had any doubt because I'd
Yeah.
seen a lot as a teenager that most young people don't experience the power of God
Mm.
at work. But I had this kind of contradiction going on. But when Warren gave his life to the Lord, I felt like my relationship with the Lord became really personal because I felt like it was like all the things up until that point. There was a big part of me thought that God was the reason that you couldn't do all the things that you wanted to do, or he
Mm.
was a bit of a spoil sport. But at that moment, I thought actually it's true that God cares about the things that I care about.
Yeah.
And I really cared about Warren, and I didn't want to let go of Warren. But I felt like in that because I'd been prepared to give him up,
Yeah.
I felt like God had heard that and had given him back,
Wow.
better. So
Yeah.
it sort of it did something in my relationship with God to make me understand that God actually loves me, not just because of my parents' faith or because I'm indoctrinated or
Yeah.
something like that. It
Yeah.
was very real and personal.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. So let's kind of. I mean, as always, the time is just going so quickly, and I mean, we
That's
could go on, and it's great. I'm really enjoying it, and I can see people's obviously comments online, and again, those thank you for joining in. And if you've got any more comments, please, just post them. And I'm looking at my secondary monitor over here, and we can do just that and respond to them. Why don't we kind of fast forward a little bit? Because you said you got, obviously, when you after university you were married then, and got involved in church and led youth groups and things
Yeah.
like that. So, but what's clear from what you've been saying right throughout with your story is again the prophetic. God speaking to you.
Yeah.
When you were 15 and painting on the stage, you said you didn't have the language then for that.
Mhm.
But obviously, then as you grown and journeyed and like you say, kind of learn that language. Obviously now you're very much involved in prophetic teams, both within Tees Valley
Mhm.
Community Church, Taking Ground family of churches, which Embrace is part of.
Yeah.
But obviously then as well, like you're also a member of the British Isle, I'm going to get this right, Council of Prophets as well. So it'd be good to hear you
Yeah.
actually, how do you live that out then? What does that look like? In those teams then, and particularly the British Isles, Council of Prophets.
Yeah.
What's that look
Yeah.
like? Give us a little bit of,
Yeah.
go an overview of that then.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's probably 20 years of training and just generally getting stuck in
Yeah,
ministry in all kinds of different ways. So I've done everything in the church. I've led the worship team, I've led worship, I've led the youth, we've led the community group ministry. We've done everything. But it's not really until the past maybe 10 years that I've realized that actually this thing that there is such a thing as a prophet, and
yeah,
and that is probably what I am. And when that is who you are, you kind of all those other leadership jobs, you do them as a prophet, and you start to see a thread running through,
yeah,
that there's
yeah,
something here. So I've done all those kinds of jobs in the church. We were part of the leadership team in Newcastle, in International Harvest Church Newcastle, which was part of the Salt and Light network
yeah,
as well. And then when we moved, Warren was working at Teesside University, and we ended up moving to Teesside and joining TVCC, which was part of the same network at the time. So we knew
mm,
Martin and everything. So I've just kind of served the Lord in whatever He's put in front of me, really. But then over time, really, I've been called into more. Probably because you realize you become more consistent in your gifting. The more you use it, and I've given myself to training. I've read books, I've gone to conferences, and all that kind of thing,
yeah,
and tried to like steward the gift that God's given me, steward it well, and I've been I've kind of been identified and drawn into different things. So I'm part of the prophetic team at TVCC. Warren and I lead that.
Yeah.
And then we're part of the Taking Ground prophetic team. And again, that's really equipping the churches in the wider network. Well, that's the idea apart from COVID times.
Yeah.
Equipping the churches in the wider network, really, in doing training, going and helping people hear from God about their own church situation. What is God saying to you here in this place?
Yeah.
Because there's lots of different ways you could lead a church, aren't there? And so I've done that, and then I probably just before the pandemic, about 18 months before the pandemic, I started to get lots of prophetic words. I think I got 9 prophetic words in an 18-month period about God giving me a wider influence, a more national and international influence. And some of those words were from people that know me, and some were from people that don't know me at all. And a couple of those words said, but you won't have to do anything. God will just do it. Because I immediately thought, well, I don't know how that's going to happen. I mean, I've been to Ukraine and Poland and India and stuff with the church, and as a prophetic person, training and stuff there. But this was a bit more than that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I met Emma Stark when she came to Middlesbrough, and just in my role, really, as a leader and prophet, I met her doing that. And she was also one of the people that prophesied over me, the same kind of stuff about having a wider influence. And in that, she said, I'm putting together this group called British Isles Council of Prophets. I think you should be in that.
Wow.
So so that's how I became part of that. And really, it's a relational network of people who are in some sort of prophetic leadership somewhere in the body of Christ.
Right. Yeah.
So it's very diverse. There are people who lead houses of prayer. There are people who lead churches. There are people who lead schools of prophecy. We're all of a certain flavour, but we are quite different.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but the core values are the same. So the styles are all different, and different types of prophetic people as well. So there's some people who have visions of heaven, and there's some people who prophesy through pictures. There's some people who write. It's a kind of diverse bunch. But really, what Emma was trying to do was to pull together a prophetic team who will hear God for the nation, and intercede for the nation,
Yeah.
and hear the sound of heaven over the British Isles.
Yeah.
So we put out a broadcast. Because of COVID, we started broadcasting on Facebook.
Yeah.
I think it started 3 times a week, it's now twice a week. And I've been doing that throughout the pandemic, and it's been really great.
Great.
And a lot of people who are watching, I know Phil watches that quite a bit, but you'll hear different types of prophetic people, so it gives you a very good insight into what prophets are like. What the sorts of things that there's a sort of consistency. They're a bit weird sometimes, but it gives you an insight and into what God is saying. And I think over the pandemic, particularly when it's been really uncertain, a bit scary for people, what's going on, when their foundations have been shaken, that's when prophets come into their own. Really, that's when you need a prophet. You need a glimpse of heaven when you don't know what's going on earth, don't you?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's, and if you look through the Bible, the prophets were always around at crisis time when people really needed to hear from God because everything was like a mess, and they didn't know what was, or in a battle or something. They'd always go and seek the word of the Lord from the prophet. So I think that's been very powerful over these last couple of years. So that's one of the things that I do, and I'm just really, and You wanted to talk. I know we've got 5 minutes, but you wanted to talk about Stockton Connect, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I just thought we'd mention that. Obviously we've had Brian and Stella and Pete, kind of in previous episodes, but obviously this is where probably where I see you face to face. Now we can meet again, kind of that kind of regularly. But how did you get involved with that then?
Yeah. Well, I think really mainly because of my relationship with Junction 42,
Yeah,
but also because I've got that background of working in addictions and prisons and things
yeah,
like through most of my career. I also have a psychology degree, by the way. That's how I got into that.
I
So that
see.
was
Yeah,
my retraining. You went into teaching, I went into drug and alcohol work.
yeah,
Um, so because of that and working in the prisons and stuff, it just felt like a very natural fit. And I like to be out and about. I'm the sort of leader who likes to be outward facing. You
yeah,
know what I mean? So
yeah,
I like to be in the church, but I like evangelism. I love prophesying, obviously, but most of what I like to do is to go out and extend the kingdom into the world.
come on, yeah,
So
absolutely,
I just felt like I feel like I have a lot of experience and I understand a lot of the things that people are going through, who the sorts of people who would come to
yeah,
connect,
yeah,
who it's for, and it is really for people who don't fit in mainstream church
yeah,
yet.
yeah,
Um, so so they maybe have lifestyle controlling issues or um, those kinds of things.
yeah, yeah,
But Dave leads worship at Connect. I think you do it about once a month, don't
yeah.
you?
I do.
And
Yeah, yeah. I love it. We're
he
there tomorrow
raises the
night,
roof.
actually.
It's great. Yeah, it's just full of energy,
It's
isn't it?
great. I love it. I really do.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love it. So I mean,
yeah,
Pete and the team and Brian and Stella are just amazing people, and it's great to see lives being changed and God doing the stuff, and it's amazing. It's amazing. It
yeah.
really is.
I think as well, there's that verse of scripture. I can't remember where it is now, but it talks about that him that's been forgiven much loves much. And I think that's what you find working with people who are on the margins, who have nothing, and who know they're sinners. There's no doubt about it,
Yeah,
and they know. Um, when they get saved, there's just an enthusiasm,
there
which is
is.
really infectious. I
Yeah,
used to, I love doing Alpha in prison for that reason because people, when they find Jesus, he really is the answer to all their problems.
that's
And
right.
the enthusiasm and the passion and
Yeah,
everything's just great. It's what you live for.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I mean, time's nearly kind of up really for because we try and keep to about an hour. We slip over a little, sometimes. But it's been really great to obviously hear your story and your involvement in lots of different kind of teams and opportunities and things like that. And I love what you said about you've invested in your gifting as well. Like, you use the phrase kind of stewarding the gifting that God's given you. Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. So what about then? So, and right at the very beginning, you kind of talked about learning that language of prophecy and spending time and everything else like that. And you said you'd lead others in training. What
Yeah.
about people who are exploring prophecy or want to kind of be released more into prophecy? What would be your kind of key advice just to kind of round things off? And then I'll put your contact details on because I'm no doubt there's going to be loads more questions and things, and we want to tap into all of those years of experience that you've got as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, the first thing I would say is to expect God to speak. So
Yeah,
that voice in your head that you've heard from time to time, or that picture or whatever that you didn't know where it came from, it probably is God.
yeah,
Okay. And you may have thought, I'm not sure. So expect God to speak. Speak to him and listen to him regularly. So make sure your prayer life is full of listening, not just full of talking.
yeah,
So spend time, we sometimes will just put on some YouTube music, Christian music videos, and just lie on the lounge floor and pray for a little bit and then just listen.
yeah,
So make sure you're listening to God. Write things down. So if you have something that comes to mind, write it down and always ask God for the next bit. So if you have a picture of something,
yeah,
um, ask God what it means, ask God what he's saying. If you look in the Bible, there's always a sort of pattern where God will show a prophet something.
Yeah.
So you'll see something and then God speaks. I saw, God said. That's a kind of common pattern. So whatever you're seeing, ask God, do the work. That's about stewarding as well. Do the work to say, okay, God, I've seen this.
Yeah.
What is it you're saying? Ask him the question and then start to make some notes, write some things down, and then talk to somebody who's more mature than you,
Yeah.
maybe, or who you trust, your leader, or whatever, and just say, this is what I'm feeling. Run it by them. And you'll be encouraged,
Yeah.
Also ask, it's things like ask God, is this for someone? Is it for me or is it for someone else?
Yeah.
Ask God those questions, write down who you think, listen to him, write down who you think it might be for. And go and give it to that person. See what
Yeah.
see what they
Step
say.
out.
So that's a good, yeah. So have a and the thing is, faith is exercised in action. Okay, so you can have all this stuff for 20 years coming through your mind. You can write it all down, but unless you start to speak it out and start to pass those messages on
Yeah.
to somebody, then it just stays in your little notebook, okay, and doesn't bring life particularly to anybody apart from you. So, and then, look for training as well. And we will be doing some training. Taking Ground will be doing some training.
Great.
We're all just getting back to, doing
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But I am talking to Helen Jones at MCC about, she's got an amazing training course that she's written. And, hopefully we'll be able to widen that out a bit. We have at TVCC, we have a ministry called Hearing God Together, which you are very welcome. If you go on our website, in the pastoral section of the website, you can book an appointment with 3 prophetic people in our church on a Friday night. You get 20 minutes on Zoom and they will prophesy over you. They will tell you what they will pray for you, and they will say what they think God wants to say to you.
Amazing.
And you can experience what it is like to be prophesied to.
Yeah.
So that's called Hearing God Together. But yeah, and I'm quite happy to chat to people as well if you want to send me some more questions.
Absolutely. No, I'm sure people really appreciate that. No, that's amazing. So obviously you said this, basically let's keep up to date with the different channels really to look out for that training. But in the meantime, let's do all of those amazing practical things that you've said there. Tuning in, stepping out, be brave, obviously talk to somebody who's more mature, do it well, steward it well, obviously come under authority and all of that kind of thing, but step out.
Yeah.
And do all, and make it, God, and like you said, you started, expect God to speak. Absolutely.
Yeah.
God is always speaking. We just need to tune in and, what that look, and like you said, learn that language right at the very beginning. You said that. Amazing. Right. We're over time now. I just want to kind of thank you for tonight. Thanks for giving up your time. It's been great. And as always, the time just seems to speed up, in the Embrace Hour. Thanks for everybody joining us online. Thank you, obviously, if you've been able to catch us live tonight. So if please set your reminders. Wednesdays, 8 p.m. 8 till 9, kind of join us live if you can, because then you get to interact. But if you're catching up as well, great that you're doing this as well. Please feel free to share these episodes far and wide as you want to. Encourage people, those who are stepping out into prophecy, get them, obviously send them this and those things. All right. I'm just going to put this on, because Mike's just. I'll put this on here. There we go. Mike's just saying, great blessing.
Oh,
really,
thanks,
bless
Mike.
you. Thank you. So,
Lovely.
what I want to know is, are we going to see you rocking the oboe at any point? And, do you fancy bring that along to, Stock and Connect at some point?
Do you know what? I've still got it as
Have
well.
you?
I've still got my oboe. Yeah. The answer to that is no.
No. Oh, that's a shame. No, that's a shame.
There won't be any painting on platforms either. That's
No.
somebody else's job.
Some singing, maybe guitar playing, maybe piano.
I can do maybe singing. I couldn't. I can play about 3 chords on the guitar.
Well, that's all you need, isn't it? And a capo, you sorted.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe 4. But there we go. Absolutely, Claire. It's been wonderful. Thank you very much for giving up your time tonight. It's been great. If you just I'm just going to wrap up now, but if you just hang on and I'll just chat to you afterwards a little bit,
Yeah.
if that's okay. But I've really enjoyed it. It's been good to kind of just chat with you and have this time and space,
Yeah.
like you say, outside of a meeting of some kind, just to kind of get to know you and a little bit more and hear about those kind of things, and obviously find out that we are fellow arty people, that kind of stuff. But
No,
obviously,
amazing.
you're living that out. I did say I was going to put all your contact details on, so there we go. For everybody there, just, obviously we put Claire's website on there, obviously TVC Church, and the Prophets website, as well as the British Isles Council of Prophets as well. So if you want to find out more, but Claire has already said, that she's more than happy if people want to get in touch as well. So I'm going to guess kind of Facebook's probably the best way to do that at first.
Yeah,
Maybe send
add me on Facebook. That would be great,
Yeah.
and you'll see a few of the things that I do as the weeks go by.
Absolutely. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you ever so much, like I say, for giving up your time tonight. And next week, actually, I have to say this to everybody because I've already, said that I'm a teacher, and I said I was shattered at the beginning of the kind of episode. We're going to have a break next week. All right, I'm actually going to go away for a few days, so we're not around next week, but the week after we will be back. All right, stay tuned for that. So thank you again, Claire, and we'll see everybody not next week, but in a couple of weeks' time. Take care.
Bye.